Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Great CEO podcast. My name is Stephen Pivnik, and I'll be your host today. With me today is another great CEO, Marc Shaw from Worldwide Land Transfer. Welcome, Marc.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So, Marc, in a couple of words, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company?
I could start with myself. I'm a 40, turning 47 in November this month in a couple weeks, and I live out of the Philadelphia area. I'm currently in the city, in the process of potentially moving out of the city.
Okay.
Um, was born and raised in the area. I went to the University of Maryland, and then graduated law school a few years later. And I started our title company, Worldwide Land Transfer, in 2005. Worldwide is a national title provider. We focus on four main areas. One is large scale commercial work, anywhere from multi-state, multi-site, large construction projects to the smallest storefront property.
Okay.
Secondly, churning joint venture work, basically helping facilitate real estate brokers and mortgage lenders to create their own title company. And then we manage it with our centralized platform in the background, providing high margins and profitability with our use of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Three, just using our parent title company Worldwide to handle run-of-the-mill residential transactions, from refinances to purchase work, residential purchase work. And then four is our institutional work. And our institutional line is based off of, large scale volume lenders, like the lenders that you would think of when I say institutional, doing a plug-in, integration
Mm-hmm.
using APIs, creating a seamless transaction for the consumer, but also really allowing scalability for both the lender as well as the title company by using, efficiencies of process, APIs, AI now, offshoring, allowing things to be essentially synergetic by using their LOS system, our title operating system, plugging them in together and allowing them to work in unison to create perfection and hopefully flawless protection for the consumer and the lender.
Interesting. Sounds like very complementary lines of businesses. I'm
They
assuming
all they all
they're,
relate.
what's that?
They all relate very well. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, are there others that do provide similar services to the market? And if so, what is your competitive advantage above them?
Yeah. That's a good question. I'll start with the first part in that, yes, there's title companies that specialize in all four of those areas. There's companies that do one area and they do it really well, and they're just in that one area. There's companies, it took us a long time, and we're now 19 years old, 18 years old, and it takes a while to start penetrating each of those areas and being able to show success in those areas, to gain traction,
Hmm.
momentum, and the ability to really scale that, essentially that department. They're each separate companies, if you will.
Sure.
And when the market contracts, unfortunately, there's depending on the business and how it contracts, and we're a business that's very heavily dependent on the larger, global economy, macroeconomics,
Sure.
the way that the interest rates move and the way the Fed interacts, and what happens with inflation, and what's happening with the housing market, supply and demand. So we're very much based off of how the world is working at that moment in time. So when the world contracts, like it is right now, as
Hmm.
interest rates rise, you find which niche is actually going to be successful, and you have to ride it until that cycle changes. So for instance, like the institutional work is obviously heavily down because no one is going to be refinancing a 3.25% mortgage with a 7%
Right.
handle, right? So you have to kind of pick and choose your battles. And when you have all these different platforms, when you have the ability to kind of roll with the tide, it allows you to be successful in the ups and the downs. So it creates some staying power, if you will.
Sure.
You had said, what is your competitive advantage? That was the second part of your question, if I'm not mistaken. And, I would say that it's really our meticulous attention to detail, and our client focused agenda. Like we go to we work in each transaction with a very personalized, customer
Okay.
centric, focused area of service for each transaction, and to ensure every transaction goes smoothly and efficiently, that we're doing our job effectively. And that all starts with the good technology. It starts
Okay.
with having good task management, having the proper protocols in place, having the proper QC in place. But I would say from the very moment that we started the company, the idea was to be very client focused. Every client in our space does things differently. And
I
that's
can
just the way it is. Every client, no client is the same. And when I say client, I'm talking about referral partners, people that are in the business that are sending repetitive work, whether
Sure.
it's real estate brokerages that have real estate agents within them, attorneys, commercial developers, commercial clients, and any types, and then residential mortgage brokers or lenders or banks.
Okay. Understood. So I think you answered my next question, which is your recurring revenue part of your business. So because of these relationships that you have, is it fair to say that a large amount of your revenue is recurring every year?
Yeah, well, I guess it really depends on the way you look at recurring, because every transaction is very specific.
Hmm.
So a real estate transaction typically doesn't happen twice, right? That would
Sure.
mean there was a mistake and you had to redo it or something. So there's really not repeat business when it comes to the transactions themselves. Now, if you do a good job, that consumer is going to come back and use you again when they buy their next home, or
Right.
when they go to refinance. They're going to
So
remember.
it's not necessarily recurring revenue, it's reoccurring revenue because these customers keep coming back to you.
They'll keep coming back. So both on the consumer side, which is the plan, that's the B2C side. And we didn't really talk about the different lines of work, but we do have a B2C channel on which,
Mhm.
we try and get to the consumer before our referral partners referring them elsewhere. So, that's like a little bit of an addition to that, to the first question you had. But yeah, our referral partners, our realtors, our banks, lenders, like I said, attorneys, commercial developers, they're all doing repetitive business over the course of time. It's never the same transaction, but they are coming back to us as long as we're doing a good job.
Right. Makes total sense. Makes total sense. So from a growth perspective, what would you say your number one point of constraint is? So if it was removed, you'd be able to scale and grow your company a lot faster.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's really interesting when it comes to the title world, because the title world's filled with nuances that are
Mhm.
very problematic when it comes to scaling and being able to grow an operation. As you grow an operation, you're going to, our corporate office is located in Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
We're right outside of Philadelphia, as I mentioned before. But we have an office in New York. We do a significant amount of business in New Jersey, both South and North Jersey. Identify them as South and North Jersey, not like North Dakota and South Dakota, or North Carolina and South Carolina, but they have different practice methods. So it was a good area for me to stop, in that, New Jersey itself has a significant different, way of doing things when you go north of Trenton. Pennsylvania is significantly different township by township, and there's I don't know, there's hundreds of municipalities.
Sure.
Right? You have, I think, 67 counties, and I don't know how many hundreds of municipalities that we have within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and every single municipality does things differently. The way their property taxes work, the way that you have to finalize a use and occupancy cert before finally closing. Delaware, South Carolina, North Carolina, Connecticut. These are states
All different. Yep.
these are all states that have some exposure to being like an attorney approved state. So an attorney has to have some sort of involvement, attorney licensed in that state. Georgia is another one. So, and each of the states has an attorney being involved in certain capacities. So the fragmentation in our business is extremely high. Everything's very much fragmented. So in order to scale, to complete the answer here, you're constantly navigating a lot of different waters, right? And
Sure.
that becomes very problematic when you're trying to build a larger scale organization.
Understood. Understood. So, back to you for a second. A lot of CEOs that are listening and watching like to hear how other CEOs spend their time. So, how many hours a week would you say you work, and how do you specifically allocate your time?
Oh boy. Well, it's a loaded question. If you ask my family, if you ask my wife, how much time she would say that I'm always on because the complaints about using my cell phone and this, that, and the other. And the
Yeah,
reality
this
is
little thing
that
doesn't leave us.
it doesn't leave you. And you know, I think that I think that all CEOs, founders, anybody that's trying to build a company, you know, we all talk about it. It's lonely. Like you have like there's definitely like you're responsible for everything.
Right.
It all stops at you. So you really can't. There is no separation. Now we have a really good COO and we have a really good CFO and I have a really great mid-level management team.
That makes a huge difference to a CEO.
We have great leaders within our organization that have been with me for a long time, and we've built a really good company together. And I think that allows me to have some separation when I really do turn that thing off. So in terms of hours, I mean, I don't know. I think it varies. There's certain projects that I can be involved where there's certain days where I literally just don't turn off and I'm working from the very early morning to late at night and I only get a few hours of sleep. And then there's other days where it's, you know, my my son or my daughter have an event I'm going to, and I'm
Sure.
out there, and the day ends early, and I'm okay with it, and I catch up the next day. But
Yep.
I think that's the best way to answer it.
No, that's totally fine. I mean, every CEO is different and every schedule is really unique. So, a key responsibility that any CEO has is delegation. How good are you at delegating? And can you name like two major things that you've delegated in the last 6 months?
Sure. Yeah, delegation was always so. I early on, I was definitely a micromanager. And I'm going back 2004, 2005, 2006. I was definitely a micromanager. I wanted it to be done, in a perfect way. Everything
Mhm.
had to be perfect. And perfect was, my way, right?
Right.
And it didn't necessarily mean it was always the right way. It
Hmm.
just meant that it was my way because that was my vision in terms of like how we were going to be successful in retaining that work, making that long-term customer, that long-term relationships a successful one for the
Hmm.
operation, right? Over the years, I definitely learned to delegate. I definitely learned to make sure that I wasn't in the weeds and I wasn't, involved on a micro level. Now, as the company has matured and I've become more of a macro leader, we have a COO. We've got I alluded to before. We've got a great CFO. I've obviously delegated a lot to mid-level management as well as the two of them. But I will say that I'll give one area where recently I completely took off my plate is I used to be like it used to stop with me when it came to like the tech stack and
Hmm.
adopting new technologies and trying to create new avenues of doing things. And one of the things that's happened is that number one, our COO has taken a lot of that on,
Okay.
but when it comes to new technology, we actually just hired an AI director. Essentially, like he's, I guess you would call him like chief technology officer in the more broader sense of the term, but I'm calling him the AI director because he's specifically in charge of essentially looking at our entire operation, figuring out little points of where we can provide benefit, not only within within the walls of Worldwide Land Transfer, with behind the scenes within our company to create scalability, to create better margins, to basically make our company better for the consumer, right? But he's also doing things for our clients,
Hmm.
making things much more efficient outside the walls,
Okay.
creating tools that are going to be specifically for the consumer, that are going to make things, you know, uh, I always call it, the real estate market has yet to, um, we're always striving to reach that utopian type transaction where
Hmm.
everything's being done in the
Right.
secure method, very flawlessly, very quickly,
Sure.
um, efficiently, and communication channels are much more. They're all tightened, and I guess
And I'm sure everybody wishes it would be a lot more seamless than it is today.
and have you bought a house in any time? Yeah, so
Yeah.
how and you bought it. Was it in New York?
In New York, yeah.
In New York. So New York is very fragmented because you've got the bank attorney, and you've got the title company, and each buyer and seller typically has their own attorney. Then there's realtors involved, and there's all this communications, all
It's
this
not
happening.
smooth. It's not smooth.
And then you've every you've got your zone 1 and zone 2, and depending on where you are in New York, what type of transfer tax you're paying, and then the mortgage tax is for most people that don't understand mortgage tax, that becomes a whole, you can write a book on mortgage tax in New York and the way
Easily.
it works. So actually using that as an example, think about the utopian standpoint of that transaction all happening within a secure bubble. Everything is happening very efficiently, very quickly. Now, I'm not saying you want to sign a contract and you want to buy the home the next day, because I think that that's somewhat unrealistic in general.
Sure.
And that's what some people, I mean, that's what, some large scale, they think that they're the unicorns of the real estate world. They're going to create this situation where you can purchase a home, in a minute, right?
Yeah, it's like
Well,
like Amazon Express checkout.
yeah, but no one wants that. No one
Right.
wants that in this business. That's not what a buyer wants.
Hmm.
You've got to have some due diligence period. You've got to
Of
do
course.
inspections. There are some processes and procedures, and
Hmm.
there's some arithmetic to be done. So
Sure.
that needs to settle down in terms of that expectation. But when I say the utopian real estate, I'm talking about you know money changing hands, communication all happening within a bubble, um, all happening in a secured fashion. All the documents are all in one spot. It's happening maybe not necessarily right away, but a lot
Sure.
quicker than it happens today.
Hmm. Yep. Understood. Understood.
So that's
So
what we'd love to build. And going
yeah,
back to the AI director, he's constantly trying to find ways that also help the consumer, like I said.
yeah, it's great to hear that you're taking advantage of AI as most companies are right now. So that's super cool. So you mentioned family a little bit. What other hobbies do you have, and what do you do for fun outside of work?
So we love to travel. Unfortunately, it's crazy. Like COVID, killed a lot of things, and
Yeah.
now we're currently out of we're out of the pandemic for what a year and a half, 2 years now, and it's really good to be able to book something and not have to worry about that. So, we love to travel. I love sports. I coached for a long time. I still do. I
Oh,
coach
cool.
my daughter, coach my son all the way through grade school, I guess. Coach travel basketball, baseball, and now he's playing, for his high school teams, and
Oh,
I
very nice.
picture he plays in the AAU basketball in the spring, and I don't have the time or the ability to commit to that anymore. So, but that was a lot of fun. I'm a passionate Philadelphia sports fan, big Eagles
Okay.
fan. Go to basically every home game, and go to as many away games. We're at the Super Bowl last year, and
Oh,
uh,
nice.
we were there in
Well,
2017, and so I'm a big Philly sports
congratulations
fan.
on last year. It was quite a year for you guys.
Well, we fell short last year, but
I
yeah,
meant the prior.
yeah, 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a nice ride, and so Philly sports is definitely a passion of mine. Um, but yeah, everything revolves around the kids right now, and I think that's obviously that ends at some point, and
Sure.
my wife and I will have to start traveling more and doing more there. But I really love working too. I mean, I think that shouldn't go unheard, and that, I think from a passion standpoint, I love building. I love trying to make things
Yeah,
better, trying to eliminate keystrokes, trying to make things more, more efficient. Um, and I love connecting with people. That's probably one of my favorite things, is like having, I feel like I can go into any room and have a conversation with anybody.
that's
Um,
awesome.
I love learning. I love listening. I'm a curious person, and in general. So yeah,
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on what you've built and good luck to you going forward. And thank you very much for joining us today on the Great CEO podcast.
I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.